agency of the ministry. And on top of that, I'm a member of the OECD GenderNet, the bureau. So we have addressed the issue of gender and climate change during our last annual meeting, and we got an update from All Inside. There is Bridge. I don't know who of you know the organization Bridge. They have done actually a study and looked into all existing materials. So they've done a literature review and compiled it. So whoever wants to have a look at it, go onto the Bridge website and you will find actually all recent publications on gender and climate change compiled there.
Can I just ask another question to go back to your question? That do we have any experience of situations where, even in the absence of dramatic climatic events, there were ways through which the awareness of the general population and the politicians seemed to increase, and what mechanisms were used? Because it seems quite a fundamental.
It's very, very bad to happen so people start thinking of it. So
and
to relate themselves to the sorrow of.
The Al Gore film had a great impact in Belgium. Everybody went to look at the film, and it was a bit like a hype, but that's the thing. It's a hype, yeah. It's a hype now, or it was a hype, and then there is another disaster coming over, so people forget about it, continue their lives, and don't do anything about it. So if tomorrow another disaster happens, then maybe there will be people thinking like, oh, okay, we have to do something about it. But it's not a hype right now, not at all.
Also, just wanted to add, for example, what we have tried to do in the UK is that we use things like the videos, DVD that you've seen this. For example, we use that video with what are called in Britain the Women's Institutes. Now, the Women's Institutes are very traditional women's organizations, the kind of organizations that exist in every community, and they do things like making jam, but not only, I'm sorry, I sound very critical, but they are really in the community, making jam, doing charity work in the community, having annual collecting money for charity. Now, and although they are very conventional, they really have an enormous reach in the community. And so, working with them and introducing to them something as basic as that video means that they communicate that message further and further and further.
We tried, I mean, we even for Kyoto, like advocated for Kyoto Protocol, because Russia was the final voice to make it happen. Yeah. But the problem is now with, for example, with nuclear. Because of all the very bad disasters, people can relate themselves. Almost all the families were somehow affected. But with climate change, it's really more. It's like the business of island states. It's not really. We didn't have even heat waves like in Europe or something. So something that was.
And I'm very sorry to say, but the thing that happens in Europe and Belgium, and I think all in surrounding countries, is a financial hurricane. And I think that we are entering real tough years in our country. And for them, it's very difficult to come up with things like climate change and gender. People are not interested in those things at that moment. They're like they're in financial problems. The country is going into recession, so it will be very difficult for many people to cope with their own family situation, with the company situation, with the organizational situation, or even the state organization. So. I mean, we noticed when we came to Manila, and colleagues, friends, family asked us, what are you going to do over there? And we thought about it, it wasn't an issue. It's not an issue, and it will definitely be not an issue the next year, I think, in Belgium, because if you talk about mainstream, if you talk about many people feeling that it's urgent, it won't be urgent because of the recession we are diving in.
Although, for example, in the Netherlands, where there are some recent reports, I think that reports do something, can trigger discussion, and it seems that sea level rise is going much quicker than they had expected. So it means that we are losing the main part of our country if we don't take measures. So then when it's that kind of information and news, then there is more recognition and there's also more resources available. So although of course much of attention goes to financial situation at the moment, also climate change, at least in a delta country like the Netherlands, is also, and the flooding, I can remember the flooding in Germany and in Eastern Europe a few years ago, that also was a lot resulted in lots of discussion. So it seems that you're right.
You haven't done that.
Or you
I think
threatening.
sometimes they invest too much money, I think, or too much energy on theoretical stuff, but it's very necessary to make it practical. And I think that media and mass media have a very important role to play, and that's how you can reach an enormous public, but you don't, and even by documentaries, but also by films and
that's, you know, I mean, that's what we do nationally to continue to keep, and sometimes they look like strange investments, in a DVD, that's nothing, but you are creating that kind of groundwork. And the other thing that strikes me, that where the interest picks up, it's when there are issues of national security is too big, but the reason why countries are concerned about food prices is when people start rioting. So making those connections, with political insecurity, also it's an interesting way about, because then there is a concern for that. So sometimes the strings are a little bit long of connections, but you have to be also kind of one side, and pick the thing that is going to attract that concern and interest.
In addition, I think it's one economic interest.